What's going on, guys? My name is Steve. Thank you for stopping by my channel. Today we're going to be reacting to Is Ireland Really the Wealthiest Country in the World? I was searching for videos about the Irish economy and I noticed that a ton of the titles were very similar to this one. They all seem to be talking about how wealthy Ireland is. And that's honestly quite surprising to me. While I didn't think Ireland was a poor country by any stretch of the imagination, I also wouldn't have thought Ireland to be one of the wealthiest countries in the world. I guess I would have probably thought Ireland was in the top 20, but probably not in the top 10. I still don't really know how wealthy Ireland is, but based off of the thumbnails of all these different videos, including this one and the titles, I'm thinking Ireland may be a little bit more wealthy than I thought they were. So I think this is going to be very interesting. So guys, I don't really know what to expect here. So let's just go ahead and dive in and learn, is Ireland really the wealthiest country in the world?
If you look at a list of countries by GDP per capita, Ireland ranks as one of the richest nations in the world. According to the IMF, for example, in 2023, Ireland's GDP per capita is $145,000, the highest in the world and nearly triple that of the UK. The World Bank puts it slightly lower at $106,000, but that still puts Ireland in third place after just Luxembourg and Singapore, and implies that Ireland is, in per capita terms, twice as wealthy as the UK.
Well, look at this. This is interesting. It seems like around 2014, it just took off, man. And since then, it hasn't looked back over the last, well, this was 2021. So like, what's that, 7-8 years? Wow. What happened in 2014, guys, to start this trend of just going through the roof? Wow.
If this wasn't impressive enough, Ireland is also the fastest growing economy in the EU by quite some distance. According to the World Bank, Ireland's GDP grew by an astonishing 12.2% last year.
That's impressive,
and Ireland's 3.5% growth in the final quarter of 2022, equivalent to an annual growth rate of about 15%, single-handedly kept the Eurozone out of recession. Unsurprisingly, these figures have provoked a bit of skepticism. Obviously, Ireland's a lovely place, but it doesn't exude wealth in the same way as, say, Luxembourg or Hong Kong. And it's hard to believe it's the wealthiest country in the world. So, in this video, we're going to have a look into Ireland's impressive GDP figures, how Ireland has achieved such rapid economic growth, and whether we can really trust the data. To understand quite how impressive Ireland's GDP figures are, we need to start with a bit of history. For most of recent history, Ireland's economic prospects were limited by population decline and deindustrialisation under British rule. Prior to the Great Famine of the 1840s, there were roughly 8.2 million people living in Ireland, but a combination of economic misery and mass emigration means its population has never returned to this level since. From its independence in 1922 up until the 1960s, Ireland went through a further period of economic stagnation marked by heavy emigration. On average, over 40,000 people left the country every year from 1946 to 1957, resulting in population decline to a record low of 2.8 million.
That's a huge percentage of the population.
The economy was highly protectionist with elevated tariff barriers, and Ireland soon became one of the poorest countries in Western Europe. There was a brief period of respite in the 1960s, when the country began to shift away from a rural agrarian economy to a more service-based economy, thanks to effective interventionist policies by the Irish government, especially in infrastructure and higher education, and a more open economy, which allowed for trading relations with other European countries as well as the UK. Unfortunately, Ireland, like much of Europe, was badly affected by the oil crisis of the 70s. Growth slowed, and Ireland became beset by industrial strikes and political crises. Governments were constantly collapsing, with power alternating between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, and neither government was very good at managing the economy. In the early 80s, growth slowed to about 2%, and Ireland became known as the sick man of Europe. For example, in 1985, Ireland's GDP per capita was about $6,000 in current USD, compared to about $9,000 in France, Germany, and the UK. It was really in the 90s that Ireland became the economic miracle that we see today. Ireland's GDP per capita began converging towards its European neighbours and accelerated in the late 90s. From 1995 to 2000, Ireland's growth averaged 9.4%, and in 2001, it had the highest GDP per capita in Western Europe, earning it the nickname the Celtic Tiger. While there have been some occasional hiccups, Ireland's rapid growth has basically continued. And as we mentioned in the intro, Ireland is now apparently one of the wealthiest countries in the world. Ireland's economy was helped by its membership of the EU, which has invested billions of dollars in Irish infrastructure, and the Eurozone, which prompted a credit boom in the 2000s. However, the main reason for Ireland's rapid GDP growth is its pro-business policies. Ireland's open economy, functioning legal system, and super low corporation tax rate have made it the tax haven of choice for Western multinationals. Yeah. Ireland is the main base in Europe for US companies, in particular from the IT and pharmaceutical sectors.
Wow, I didn't know that.
In recent years, Google, Meta, Yahoo, eBay, and Amazon have all set up shop in Ireland to serve Europe. Unfortunately, the presence of these multinationals distort Ireland's real wealth. The main reason for this is how GDP is measured. Essentially, GDP is meant to measure a country's productive capacity by summing four things: government spending, household consumption investment, and the difference between exports and imports. In practice, more exports means higher GDP. However, GDP doesn't really distinguish between different types of exports. To take advantage of Ireland's low corporation tax rate, many multinational companies claim that most of their business takes the form of exports from the Irish subsidiaries. The precise mechanism is a bit complicated, but the basic idea is that when, say, Apple sells an iPhone, it claims that most of the value comes from research and development operations in Ireland. In other words, despite the fact that an iPhone is designed in California and built in China, when you buy one, most of the money goes to Apple's Irish subsidiary. This is why, in 2018, the IMF calculated that a quarter of Ireland's growth was actually down to iPhone sales.
What?
Multinationals also
What? Hold on. Quarter of Irish economic growth due to the iPhone. Is that true? I mean, I don't know if this is 2018, so that's like 5 years ago, but at least at that point, a quarter of the economic growth was due to this single thing, the iPhone. Wow. That's crazy. That's what I'm wondering. Like 2014, it seems like there was just another huge, growth that's been going on since. When did Apple or some of these other tech companies set up shop in Ireland?
Quarter of Ireland's growth was actually down to iPhone sales.
Wow,
multinationals also inflate Ireland's investment rate because when they move money about between their various subsidiaries, it counts as foreign direct investment, even though it's actually just an accounting gimmick. In 2019, the IMF estimated that 60% of Irish foreign direct investment was, quote, phantom. Anyway, this is why Ireland's former central banker, Patrick Honohan, argues that we should ignore these two components of GDP when measuring Ireland's wealth, and just focus on household consumption and spending by the government on public services. By this measure, Ireland ranks just slightly below the EU average, below countries like Luxembourg or Denmark, but above.
Okay, so this is taken into account only two of the four, what were they? Hold on, I want to look at this again. Okay, you got rid of the investments, the export-import difference. So you're only including government spending and household consumption, and it takes Ireland down to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. I said I thought they would be in the top 20, and so right around that. Okay.
Below the EU average, below countries like Luxembourg or Denmark, but above EU nations like Spain, Poland, and Portugal. Obviously, this is still impressive. It means that Ireland is a prosperous European country with stable institutions, but it's definitely not the wealthiest country in the world. All in all, while its GDP might be overstated, and Ireland is probably closer to New Zealand or Italy than to Switzerland or Norway, it's still a prosperous European country, which is really impressive given its economic history.
All right, guys, this was interesting. I definitely learned a few things about the Irish economy. So it sounds like while Ireland isn't technically the wealthiest country in the world, they're definitely within the top 20 or so, and their GDP is absolutely the first in the world, it seems. But I'm thinking what I'm hearing here is that basically, even though the GDP is the wealthiest in the world, or maybe first or second, depending on who's looking at it, it sounds like maybe that wealth hasn't trickled down to the population. Is that basically what he's saying here? It sounds like maybe a few of these corporations that have moved in over the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, we'll say, have kind of bloated the GDP in a way that it makes Ireland look like they're the wealthiest country in the world, but the people themselves aren't technically living that way, or the people themselves don't technically feel that wealth on average. This definitely makes me wonder kind of what the cost of living is like in Ireland. That would definitely help me kind of understand the economy a little bit better, trying to figure out like what is the average income in Ireland, and what are people spending on housing and food and whatnot. How far would my money go, for example, if I was to come to Ireland for a visit? Like, would I feel that Ireland was very expensive to me, or would it seem cheaper than it for the same type of stuff in the US? If you have any videos that, kind of share more about the cost of living and stuff like that, or other videos about the Irish economy, please feel free to leave them in the comments. I definitely would like to check those out. But I thought this was really interesting. It definitely gave me an idea of where Ireland falls on the actual wealth rankings, if you will. I think this is probably more average. It says the index measured at purchasing power parities with the United States. I just want to go deeper into this to be able to really truly understand exactly what I'm looking at with this. But all in all, I thought this was interesting, guys. Please feel free to leave your comments or suggestions about this video or others. And don't forget to subscribe to continue to follow me on my journey to discover my British and Irish ancestry. Thanks for stopping by, guys. Until next time, peace.